Hi there. Today we're going to discuss square roots and cube roots. Objectives and standards. Today we're going to learn how to find square roots and find cube roots. We're going to use rational approximations of irrational numbers to compare the size of irrational numbers, look at them approximately on a number line diagram, and estimate the value of expressions. We're also going to use square root and cube root symbols to represent solutions to equations in the form x squared equals p and x cubed equals p, where p is a positive rational number. We're also going to evaluate square roots of small perfect squares and cube roots of small perfect cubes, and to know that the square root of 2 is irrational. Vocabulary you're going to need to know today is square root, perfect square, radical sign, cube root, and perfect cube. Key concept, square roots. The square root of a number is one of its two equal factors. In symbols, if x squared equals y, then x is the square root of y. Numbers like 9, 25, and 144 are called perfect squares because they are squares of integers. The opposite of squaring a number is finding the square root. A radical sign is used to indicate a non-negative square root. Every positive number has both a positive and a negative square root. An example, the square root of 36 is 6, meaning what number multiplied by itself equals 36? That's 6. Here, the negative is on the outside. So it's basically, what is the square root of 36? That's 6. And what's the negative of it? Negative 6. Here is a symbol. This is called positive or negative. What is the positive or negative square root of 36? And how do we get that? You can have positive 6 times positive 6 equals 36. And negative 6 times negative 6 can also equal 36. A negative number like negative 36 has no real number square root because the square of a number cannot be negative. So whenever you're multiplying numbers times itself, positive times a positive is going to be a positive, and a negative times a negative is also going to be a positive. So you can't take a square root of a negative number. Just to review, this is the square root symbol. It's called the radical sign. You have to think to yourself, what number multiplied by itself will equal the number inside the symbol? And again, this is the positive negative symbol. The number could be either positive or negative. Example 1, find each square root. So here we have the square root of 9. So what number multiplied by itself is going to equal 9? And that equals 3. Because 3 squared equals 9, meaning 3 times itself equals 9. Here the negative is on the outside, so we first have to find the square root of 64. So what number times itself equals 64? That's 8. So the negative of 8 is negative 8. Here we have another example where it's positive and negative. So either answer could be positive or negative. So think about it this way. What number multiplied by itself will equal 4? Most of us would think 2. But now that we know about integers, we know that negative 2 times negative 2 is going to also equal 4. So the answer could be positive 2 or it could be negative 2. And here we have the square root of negative 81. Now, as discussed earlier, you can't take a square root of a negative number because any number multiplied by itself, whether it's going to be positive or negative, is going to be positive. So there's no real square root because no number times itself is equal to negative 81. You can estimate the square root of an integer that's not a perfect square by determining which two consecutive integers the square root lies. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to find two perfect squares that the number is between, and then we're going to decide which number it's closest to. All right, so our first one is estimate each square root to the nearest integer. So we're trying to find the square root of 33. Now, without using our calculators, we want to know where this number lies closer to. Okay, so we know from what we know about square roots, we know that 33 is between 25 and 36. And the reason why I chose those numbers is because 5 squared equals 25 and 6 squared equals 36. So 33 is between these two numbers. Now that we know that this number, square root of 33, is between those two numbers, we have to decide where is it closest to. And what we're going to do is we're going to graph it, okay? So we know that the square root of 25 is 5. We know that the square root of 36 is 6. And we know that the square root of 33 is somewhere between them. And now we know that it's around 5.75. So the question is, where is it closer to? Well, we know that it's closer to 6. Okay, so all we're doing is finding two squares that it's between. Then we're going to graph them on a number line and find out which one it's closer to by distance. And then we would say square root of 33 is between 5 and 6. 33 is closer to 36, so it's going to be closer to the square root of 6. Here's another example, the negative square root of 129. So the squares that I'm thinking about are 11 and 12, because 11 times 11 is 121, 12 times 12 is 144. This number falls, right between them. So automatically, if we're looking at these, which one is 129 closer to? Is it closer to 121 or 144? Let's find out as we graph. So again, we're going to graph on the negatives. Negative 11 is the negative square root of 121. Negative 12 is the negative square root of 144. So when we graphed it, we can see that it's closer to negative 11 than it is to negative 12. So we would say that it's closer to negative 11. On a clear day, the number of miles a person can see to the horizon can be found using the formula d times 1.22 times the square root of h, where d is the distance to the horizon in miles and h is the person's distance from the ground in feet. The observation deck of Seattle Space Needle is 520 feet high. How far to the horizon can a person stand on the observation deck C? Round to the nearest tenth. Okay, so we were given some information. We were given an equation, and we need to know what to substitute. So this is our equation, d equals 1.22 times the square root of h. And we also know that the height was 520. So the first thing that we're going to do is write down the equation, and then we're going to substitute. So we have 1.22 times the square root of 520. So the square root of 520 is just about 22.8, and they said here use a calculator. I don't recommend trying to find this by hand. And all you have to do now is multiply. So the approximate distance to the horizon is 27.8 miles to the nearest tenth. Cube roots. A cube root of a number is one of its three equal factors, meaning that you're multiplying a number by itself 3 times. So if x to the third power equals y, then x equals, we'll say, the cube root of y. And they symbolize it with having that little 3 above the radical sign. All right? A cube root is a number of one of 3 equal factors of the number. The symbol cube root is used to indicate the cube root of a number. This part's really important. Every integer has exactly 1 cube root. The cube root of a positive number is positive. The cube root of 0 is 0. And the cube root of a negative number is negative. So it is possible to take a cube root of a negative number, but not a square. All right, so find each cube root. So here we're saying the cube root of 343. So we have to ask ourselves, what number multiplied by itself 3 times is going to equal 343? Well, that number is 7, because 7 times 7 times 7 equals 343. Our next one is the cube root of negative 729. Again, it is possible to have a cube root of a negative number. So what number multiplied by itself 3 times equals 729? That number is negative 9. So negative 9 times negative 9 times negative 9 equals negative 729. You can also estimate cube roots mentally by using perfect cubes. So we're going to do this mentally. We're not going to really use a calculator because it tells us not to use a calculator. Okay, so the cube root of 83. So let's think about what our perfect cubes are. We know that 4 cubed, meaning 4 times 4 times 4 is 64, and 5 cubed is 5 times 5 times 5. That equals 125. So it's actually between 4 cubed and 5 cubed. That's the number, cube root of 83 is between these two. Again, we can think about it using the whole numbers before we start graphing, but is 83 closer to 64 or 125? So here I am, I'm going to graph it really quick. And this is my 4 cubed and this is my 5 cubed. Here is a number that's going to equal the cube root of 83. And if you see the distance, it is closer to 4. So we would just say the cube root of 83 is closer to 4. Today we found square roots and cube roots. I hope that video was helpful. Thank you. Bye.